Have you ever wondered what it really takes for leaders and organizations to maintain trust when things go wrong, especially when the stakes are sky high? If you ever struggled with communicating in a crisis or worried about how a misstep could erode hard-earned customer loyalty, you're not alone. I know I felt that pressure. In today's episode, Michael Meath, a nationally trusted advisor and former chair at Syracuse University's School of Public Relations, help us peel back the curtain on high-stakes crisis management and the role communication plays in delivering a world-class customer experience. Michael unlocks why most companies stumble when the pressure's on and reveals the sweet spot of success, a powerful intersection of strategy, communication, and integrity that leaders can activate starting today. You'll walk away from this episode empowered to make your business more resilient, not just when it counts most, but every single day. Think about the Tylenol cyanide scare, the Exxon Valdez oil spill, or the Wells Fargo fake account scandal, moments when corporate trust hangs by a thread. Those are the kinds of high-stakes crisis my guest, Michael Meath, has spent his career helping organizations navigate. As former interim chair of the Syracuse University School of Public Relations, Michael is a trusted guide leaders turn to when reputations are on the line, when times are uneventful, and when crisis hits. Michael, welcome to the Delighted Customers podcast.
Mark, it's great to be with you, and thanks for having me.
I am so excited. You have spent over 40 years helping all these organizations throughout the United States navigate sensitive and confidential, quite frankly, confidential situations. CEOs, when I imagine those doors close and the executive team gathers together and says, holy crap, what do we do now? I mean, have you found yourself in that situation, and what's it like to be the person somebody turns to?
Well, it's interesting, Mark. I never planned on having that as a career path, but as I found myself more and more kind of going from the frying pan to the fire and being involved with these pretty significant high-stakes situations, and sometimes just really sensitive situations, I found myself more and more in the room listening to CEOs who were really dealing with some troubling issues and needing somebody who would be honest with them, would be straightforward with them, and would not necessarily try to just be a yes person. And that seems to be a role that I just sort of fell into. I did not plan it, but the more I got into it, the more I found that it was an adrenaline rush, and it was also something that seemed to add value.
Well, you really are trusted, not just by businesses, but also by Syracuse, which when I heard that you were chairing the public relations department, I was totally impressed, because some of our listeners may or may not be aware that the kind of reputation Syracuse and communications has, you've got people like Ted Koppel, Steve Croft, Marv Albert, Bob Costas, Mike Tirico. These people all came, Dick Clark, these people all came out of Syracuse in the communications area.
I got to teach in the Bob Costas room and the Mike Tirico room almost every semester. So yeah, absolutely, I would see these names. Yeah. Awesome. Well, you may be asking, why do I have Michael on the show, and what's the intersection between communications, public relations, and customer experience management? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today when it comes to the strategy around that. And Michael has some ideas, some models, or a model around how business leaders can think about that. But first, can we do some level setting when we talk about strategy, communications, and customer experience, and kind of the intersection there, for people who may not be familiar when you think about strategy, when you think about communications and how they intersect with CX, what are we really talking about there? Well, I think, Mark, that strategy and communications have absolutely everything to do with customer experience. I mean, there isn't a moment that they don't align, although people don't think about it necessarily. Mm-hmm. So strategy, everybody knows strategy is kind of what's your plan, what's your objective, what are you trying to do with your business? And it could be that I want to make more of these, or it could be that I want to raise more money for a nonprofit, or it could be that there's a particular piece of legislation that I'm trying to get through, or it could be any of those things. It's the idea of having a a direction where you're trying to go. And any successful organization, as we know, has some kind of a strategy that they're trying to execute on. So that's strategy. Now, communications can be any form that we might use, all the vehicles and the tools, whether it's public relations or marketing or advertising, now the digital arena and everything that holds for us. However, what it's really all about is helping that CEO, help her get it from here, right, from their head to their brain, for those that are listening, to their mouth. And to get the word out. If you're a nonprofit, I always like to say that I'm trying to get it from my heart to my mouth or to my audiences. And so then the customer experience is every one of those many places that you talk about every week on your show, where we are trying to interface with the customer so that they have the best experience possible. And when things go wrong, and they will go wrong, how do we make them better?
Okay, so thanks for level setting. That makes a lot of sense to me. And the question I'd like to ask next is, gosh, it seems kind of obvious, right, that it should be a big deal to the C-suite. But why should they care about investing time, money, energy, resources into the communications, public relations of their organization?
What I found was that, number one, some organizations are successful because they have a really good idea. They have a product we need. They have a service that we're interested in. And so almost kind of by accident, they can become successful for a period of time. What I also found is that if they didn't communicate well about what that product or service was, that success could be short-lived. And then I worked with that idea for a while, but what I found is that there was a piece missing. And the piece for me that was missing was, oddly enough, integrity. So we actually, in this company that I started back in 2004, we developed a logo, which we subsequently trademarked and then I sold. And this logo has strategy, communications, and integrity as three circles that overlap each other. And then at the center of that is what I like to call the actual sweet spot of success. So for an organization to be successful long-term, they've got to have that strategy. What's the business plan, the objective that they're trying to accomplish, number one. Number two, they got to be able to get it from their brain or their heart to their audience. And then number three, they better do that with some level of honesty, fairness, treating each other the way we'd like to be treated. Because if they don't, and that's where the customer comes in, then they might be successful for a while, but long term, they're not going to be successful. And that, to me, became kind of that's why a CEO should care.
Right. So I love the model, and we're going to dig into some of the ways that you might be able to activate the model. But first, I just did while you were talking, a quick search on the definition of integrity. So just to do a little more level setting, would you be in harmony with this definition, the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, moral uprightness? Would you add or detract anything from that?
Well, I teach ethics as well at the university, both the graduate and the undergraduate level. And what I find is that most people try to say that morality and ethics is the same thing, and it's not.
Say more about that.
Well, morals is what you, and not to turn this whole program into something else, morals is what you or I believe is right or wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what our morals are based on. Integrity, or ethics, is what we do about what we think is right or wrong. There's a subtle difference to that. So an organization that acts ethically or with integrity is one that is honest, is straightforward, and treats people with fairness. And it really does kind of come back to the golden rule in terms of I want to be treated. When you think about customer experience, I want to be treated the way that I should be treated. And I think everyone would like to be treated with some kind of sort of basic honesty. And
and oftentimes in the CX world, and this may have even been something you've heard of, is we talk about the platinum rule, right? Sure. Instead of treating people the way they want to be treated, the way you want to be treated, treat them the way they want to be treated.
One of your questions I know you're going to ask me later is that, what's an example? What do I think it's like to be a delighted customer? Well, to me, to be a delighted customer is when I buy something, let's say, and it doesn't always have to be a financial transaction, but quite often it is, that I'm absolutely happy to take the checkbook and write the check. I mean, in fact, I can't wait to do it. because the service or the product that I've gotten was so impressive to me and the way I was treated that I am happy to give my money away. And I can think of 2 or 3 examples in my life when I've done that and been really, really glad to do it. And if you want to be kind of understanding what the best definition of the delighted customer is, to me, there isn't anything better.
Yeah, well said. Well said. So as companies embark on this journey to try and hit that sweet spot, the intersection that you talk about, the way they think about communications and public relations as it relates, as it connects and delivers on their strategy, what are some of the myths out there that really aren't true?
Yeah, great. That's a great question. The first one would probably be that louder is better, right? That the higher the volume, the better we're going to get our name out there, the more people are going to want to align with us and either buy our product or service or support us or whatever the case may be. And that just isn't the case. Now, unfortunately, these devices have made it seem like that's even more important, that we've got to increase our volume, we got to increase all that activity, but that's not necessarily true. Secondly, I think we've kind of gotten ourselves so overloaded with information that any organization feels as though if I can just flood the market with multiple channels of information or sources, whether it's advertisement or marketing or public relations or whatever, that's going to do me more good. And that's not necessarily the case. I don't know about you, but even just this morning when I got off the pickleball court, I started to scroll through my daily news, and you get a little bit overwhelmed with information. And then embedded within that is the 3,000, 4,000 different messages that we receive during the normal course of a day of somebody trying to sell us something, influence us with something, or try to, persuade us on something. So the volume, I think, is sometimes something that even CEOs and really successful companies feel like they've got to make the most noise and put out the most information possible.
Great point. 100% agree. All right, so as companies move along their journey, what are some of the missteps they make when it comes to applying good communication or public relations? Well,
when things don't go well, I tend to be viewed, the joke is among some of my longest term clients is they sort of view me as an undertaker. They want to know I'm there. They want to know that I'm around, but they'd rather not talk to me. So when a crisis occurs or when something sensitive happens, and I really do want to emphasize that, Mark, for your listeners, that quite often we think crisis communications is all this big, everything's high stake. It's the Exxon Valdez, it's the Tylenol, right? It's Wells Fargo. But there are small situations that happen in every organization every single day that are sensitive, and if not handled carefully, they could blow up into something bigger or erode your customer confidence and trust that you might have. So, number one of the myths or one of the missteps, I should say, that a lot of people make is that when things don't go well, they get quiet. They don't say anything. And either because they're not sure what to say, number one. Number two, they might have legal counsel, and I do a lot of work with attorneys, but some legal counsel, their response to any situation that's not going well is no comment. And there are times when no comment is probably the right thing to say. But more often than not, I've found that you're better off positioning some kind of a message out there very strategically rather than saying no comment. Or it could be the case that they think that if they're silent, that the situation will either dissipate on its own or be handled in some other way. And I can give you an example either now or later, whenever you'd like.
Yeah, do share an example.
Okay, so relative to silence, I worked for a company that was a very, very large energy business for a long time. We had 500,000 customers. And my responsibility was public relations, public affairs at the time. And we had, as a large heating oil company, right, on the East Coast, we would, on occasion, put heating oil in somebody's basement because we connected to the wrong pipe, a pipe was broken, somebody wasn't paying attention while they were filling the tank, whatever the case might be. And in the industry, one of the common practices used to be to tell your driver when that happened, disconnect, drive away, don't say anything, don't talk to anybody. And you can kind of see why when things go wrong, sometimes that's a misstep that an organization might take. Well, we tried to do something a little bit different once. I had just taken a course at Harvard on dealing with an angry public and how to manage situations when they don't go well. And we decided that in this situation, what we would do is we would, instead of running away from the situation, run to the situation. Immediately contact the customer, say, we screwed up, and we need you to take your family and go into a hotel for the next several weeks. We'll pay for it. Get a 2-room suite so your kids have a separate room, whatever it's going to take. We'll take care of it. We're going to take care of you ripping up your basement floor, replacing all the furniture that's down there, all the finishes, everything else. And then instead of putting all our money and our time and our thought into what are the defense costs going to be to defend ourselves in this, because we're going to be buying a house or a basement or something out of this, run towards the situation, do absolutely everything the right way, and recognize that worst case scenario, we might end up losing a customer, but we will have at least tried to do the right thing. Best case scenario, we might actually keep the customer, because recognizing that in the world things go wrong, things get screwed up. It's what you do next was one of my favorite lines. It's what you do next. So by doing that, I think we that's the opposite of the misstep of going silent, no comment, walking away.
CX professionals know that every touch point matters, but managing the entire customer journey can be challenging, especially for enterprises due to disjointed data, difficulty aligning stakeholders, and struggling to secure executive support. And that's where JourneyTrack comes in. JourneyTrack integrates journey mapping management and measurement, allowing you to pinpoint friction, optimize experiences, and demonstrate the ROI of CX initiatives. So you can align teams, break down silos, and then you can track improvements in real time. With JourneyTrack, you can get visibility across every channel and touch point. No more guesswork, just clear insights and measurable results. Join the CX leaders who transform journeys into improved experiences with impactful business outcomes, like reduced churn and increased customer lifetime value. Visit journeytrack.io today and see how better journeys lead to better business. Yeah, I love that. We talk a lot about trust on the show and how you can build or not build trust. And obviously one of the principles around that is transparency. So here you're talking about something that might seem counterintuitive is diving right into it, owning it. And in the long run, it always pays off to be honest and truthful. And as a business, there are times, I can think of a time, I worked at a bank in the Mid-Atlantic for almost a decade. Over that period of time, you might imagine the bad guys are pretty active when it comes to banks. And so we had everything from skimmers, if you remember that, where people would take an image of your card as you swiped it with a little camera they'd put on the pump and scan your card number, create a fake card and use it, to security breaches, just people from overseas getting into the database somehow. And so there were meetings that were kept to a very finite number of people at the bank, small circle of people, to say, okay, what's the impact, what's the magnitude of the breach, and how widespread do we share it? Because on the one hand, it's like if I scare people enough about security and safety, because people look at banks, yes, as places where they can leverage their money and grow their nest egg. But they also look at it as a safe place. Many of our customers, it was community banks, so many of our customers looking just really for safety. So if you believe that this bank is a target or the bank is a sieve for the bad guys and you believe your money's at risk, you could leave. So there's that balance of what do I share, how much do I share? What would be your thoughts on a situation like that?
Well, actually, I had a regional bank had, I want to say about 100 branches. Northeast, mostly New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, up into New England a little bit. And great. You want to talk about a great organization with high integrity, tremendous. They had a school district. They had many school districts as customers, but they had a school district. And the treasurer of the school district had her credentials hacked through Facebook. The bad guys went in and figured out a way just by the basic information that she would use every day, and they were able to tunnel their way into the bank account. And they, from this bank, on behalf of the school district, they took out several $1 million. Now, the bank jumped on it as it was their kind of their modus operandi when anything didn't go well. And they were able to recover much of the money, not all of it. But in the process, what I found is that this was just another example of not going silent, but going, kind of full bore right away. Owning something, communicating about it, getting out in front of it. There's a term in my industry that's called get ugly early. And it's the idea to say that it doesn't do any good to just kind of wait. Now, sometimes I will advise clients to not go public with something right away. I can think of multiple examples of that. But at the same time, they have to be ready to be public. So they have to have messages ready, and I have formulas for that and everything else, so that as soon as they get asked about something, it's not the no comment, but it's that they have something to say. The idea of being strategic is not necessarily to go proactively with all your messages, but you certainly need to be ready with your messages so that you can say something when you need to. And it makes me think of another misstep, I think, if that's okay. Another misstep that organizations sometimes make, and this can directly relate to the CX area, that a customer calls in with a problem. It could be the shirt didn't fit, it could be the toaster didn't work. It could be any number of things. And organizations sometimes will try to pacify the customer, or sometimes they'll elevate and they'll go up the chain, right? If they need to. Makes sense. But what I found is that a rule kind of came into play for me when I would deal, not so much in the CX area, but in the corporate area when things we're talking about a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, an environmental spill, a wrong site surgery, any of those kinds of things, is that I came up with this mantra that you can always go up, but you can't come back down. Meaning that if you're the spokesperson or the customer service manager for a particular issue, and you're dealing with the customer, you can certainly elevate it and take it up a notch. That might help the customer gain even more confidence. It might get them an answer quicker. Who knows? Maybe somebody's got more authority and more leeway. But if you go up and then you come back down, meaning if you pass that on to your boss and your boss starts to handle it and says, well, I'm going to shift you back to Mark, then that customer's confidence is going to be shaken and their trust level is going to go down. And the classic example of that, to go all the way to the top of your show, was not the Exxon Valdez, but the Horizon accident that occurred in the Gulf of Mexico some years ago, British Petroleum, and we had the well blow off. So in the Horizons accident, what happened was Tony Hayward, who was the CEO of BP, he was over in Great Britain, and he immediately spoke, which was good, to say, yes, we've had an incident in the Gulf. No, we don't know the full magnitude of it. He probably went a little too far and said, we think we're going to be able to control it, but nobody knew at that point how really massive it was. And then he got on an airplane and went silent for 12 hours. And they ended up pushing the spokesperson role down to somebody else who was at a much lower level, who, by the way, did a great job, because that individual, I think his name was Chuck Stickles, he was in Louisiana. He actually had the accent for the region. So he could relate to the people that were most immediately affected. Did a pretty good job. Then Hayward gets on U.S. soil and starts to speak about it again. So we've gone up, down. Now where he's trying to take control, he wants to go up again. And very shortly into the incident, it wasn't more than a few days, he was getting frustrated because things were getting worse and worse and worse. And he stated the really, really famous line that every textbook on crisis communications has used since, which was, hey, I just would like my life back. Yeah, so imagine what that does to trust. Whether you're an employee, a contractor, an end-use customer, somebody who lives on the Gulf, a fisherman, you name it. So you can always go up, but you can't come back down. And I think that would apply into anything in the customer experience area as well.
A great story. What a great story. Okay, so let's talk about, if you would, some ways to activate this model that we're talking about, strategy, communication, CX, What are some practical steps that leaders can take in order to put this into place?
Number one, leaders should always have, in their organizations, but we're talking about the C-suite or the E-team or whatever, they should always have a set of messages surrounding whatever they're working on, the good news, and whatever they might be working on that's the not so good news. And those messages can't be 5 typewritten pages in 8-point font. We used to have a rule for everything we did, and it was actually a chief financial officer at a huge health system taught me this years ago when I was doing some work for them. And he said, 1 page, 14-point font.
Love it.
Now, anybody who knows anything about, what they type on their word processor is that 14-point font's pretty big.
Yeah.
And the way I do it is I number all my messages, good news, bad news, and I leave a space between each one, which means that on 1 page 14-point font, whether I'm dealing with $1 billion with a B, Chapter 11 bankruptcy, or I'm dealing with a fireplace insert company who's had problems with their product, and they're trying to figure out how to get it under control. 1 page, 14-point font, this is what we're going to say about it. Number two, once you develop those messages, you got to make sure that everybody has them and uses the same sheet of music, internally as well as externally. Mark, I can't tell you the times when I've seen organizations who would buy into my thinking about this set of messages, and then they'd get done with them, and they wouldn't bother to tell their own employees internally. They'd say, there's our messages for our customers or our suppliers or our business partners or whatever. And then all the employees are sitting around saying, well, what's going on? What's the message? What are we doing? So and it's not necessarily intentional, but they step over their most important audience, right? Think Wegmans. Wegmans Food Markets, one of the number one places to work year over year after year by whether it's U.S. News, whether it's Forbes, it doesn't matter. Wegmans' most important customer, or most important audience, I should say, is not their customer. Their most important audience is their employees. Mm-hmm. And they make no bones about saying that. So that's kind of number two. You develop these messages and you make sure you use them internally. Number three, make sure everybody uses the same messages. There's a story that I got called once. I was actually out in the middle of I was on a kayak trip in the middle of the Adirondack Mountains. And I got a phone call from an engineering firm who had been rebuilding a sewage treatment plant on the border of a Class B waterway. Class B waterway, it's not, you can't swim in it, but it's clean water. Sewage treatment plants, of course, when they do their job right, they discharge clean water from the plant. Mm-hmm. So they had rebuilt this huge facility. And on this particular Sunday morning at 4 a.m., a 3 million gallon raw sewage holding tank collapsed. And all that raw sewage went right into the river. So the organization had their senior team sitting around a conference table at 7:45 in the morning. I'm sitting in a kayak in the middle of Fourth Lake up in the Adirondack Mountains. And we're talking through what the messages are going to be. And I said, now we've got to make sure that somebody's writing these down and they are very specific, because 1 page, 14-point font, we're not pages and pages of stuff. Got done with all the messages and everything else. Are we good? Everybody's got them. Yep. End of the day, I finally got to a place where I had more than just a weak cell coverage. Got a hold of the CEO. He said, all hell broke loose. Did not go well. What went wrong? He said, well, we used your messages. I said, well, who wrote them down? Did you just have one set? Oh, no. We all wrote them down and we all kind of interpreted our own. Well, that's what went wrong. So then the New York Times and USA Today and the Wall Street Journal, and they all had kind of a different story. And this company kind of had a trust issue because people wondered what really happened. And just think about that example and consider all the stuff that you're scrolling through in the news all the time now from every single source. I get on a web browser and I see story after story after story, and I've finally gotten to the point where I'm wondering, which one's real? Mm-hmm. Which one's really the truth? Mm-hmm. So it's this idea of keeping everybody on the same message.
Yeah. What a great point. Simple. I love how simple that message is, and I'm sure getting it right may take a little bit of time, but 14-point font on 1 page, it's a small investment compared to what could happen.
And as Mark Twain once said, if you wanted a shorter letter, I needed more time.
Exactly. What great strategies. Is there anything else you would add as guidance for leaders when it comes to this topic?
Make sure, and this is not a pitch for an outside consultant, because it's really not. Mm-hmm. Make sure that there's someone, if you're a leader, if you're the CEO, or you're the vice president of marketing, or you're the vice president of public affairs, or whatever your job might be that has that responsibility. Make sure that there's somebody on your team, and it could be on your team, it doesn't have to be on the outside, who's honest with you, who's not afraid to say, and you're willing to listen, to hear, that didn't go well, or we need to rethink how we position that. Because too often organizations get caught up in groupthink. I used to have a real estate developer as a client. This guy was a pretty big deal. He was a billionaire, and he kept me around. And I don't know why, Mark. You know me just a little bit, and I'm not necessarily that bombastic. I tend to be a little bit quieter. But this guy kept me around. We would do conference calls almost every day at 6 o'clock in the morning. And he called me Dr. No, because he would want to do things, and I wouldn't want to do them. And I would say no. And it was probably at a time in my business cycle where I had at least enough confidence that I thought, if I lose this client, that's okay. And we all get to a certain point in our careers where we think, as the farmer's insurance commercial says, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. Mm-hmm. So I was a little more willing to just be dead honest with this person. And I think CEOs that are good, that are thoughtful, that really are interested in long-term success, want to have that. They want somebody around them who's not afraid to say no. So I would always encourage anyone to be, especially if you've got, and I've had good friends that ran call centers with 1,000, they've got 1,000 CSRs located in multiple countries and everything else, just to make sure that there's somebody on the team. And sometimes we would call them the crank. I hate to be referred to as that. Sometimes we refer to them the person that's at least kind of going to do a gut check or be the conscience. It's important to have around.
Great advice. Boy, so many great gems, from getting ugly early, which reminds me of my pickleball game, to go up, but don't go up and then go back down and then try and go back up. It's not going to work out too well. So many great gems here. I want to, unfortunately, we're going to have to land the plane here, but I am going to ask you that question. I know you started to allude to it, but what delights you as a customer?
I think what delights me as a customer is when an organization, whether I'm buying a shirt from LL Bean or $30,000 worth of landscaping for my backyard, when they speak clearly and plainly, no jargon, and they do what they say they're going to do. And if they do what they say they're going to do, my trust level goes up. I'm glad to write the check, and I'm going to tell everybody I know about them. And that's what delights me as a customer.
Makes perfect sense. Michael, thank you so much for being a guest on the Delighted Customers podcast. Very different show today on a topic we have not covered in over 150 episodes. Fun to have an expert and someone who's experienced, works with some of the biggest companies, organizations, even, and we didn't mention this, but you do work with the veterans and the military as well. Thank you so much for being a guest. If people want to get a hold of you, Michael, what would be the best way?
Sure. Well, first of all, I have a website, and it's michaelmeath.com. So MichaelMeath.com. There's a connection there and easily can get from there. Also an email address, mf as in Frank, MEATH at falling, just like falling down, falling hyphen or dash brook, BROOK.com. And either of those are great avenues.
Excellent. And we'll have references in the show notes as well.
Great. Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks so much for being on the show. Hey, YouTube viewers. Thanks for watching the Delighted Customers podcast here on YouTube. If you found value in today's conversation, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. That way you'll never miss our weekly episodes with industry leaders sharing their strategies and insights that can transform your approach to customer experience and change leadership. Your subscription helps us reach more professionals like you who are passionate about creating meaningful change in their organizations. Thanks for being a part of our community, and I'll see you in the next episode.